Oh, you degenerates. Ladies and gentlemen, I have it. After an entire year of teasing from a man who is just as much known for tuning IEMs as he is for single-handedly blue-balling the entire IEM community, the Dusk. Not the Blessing Dusk, not the Blessing 2 Dusk, no. Just the Dusk. Somehow he's managed to take the Dusk moniker and make it its own thing. But what we have here is the logical next step for IEMs, the evolution as it were, because what we have in our hands right now, ladies and gentlemen, sorry, I've got the wrong end, is a sub 6mm nozzle. I've been talking about it for over a year. I'd like to believe I had a part in this because this little puppy, only 5.79mm, which means it fits an additional like at least 3.2% of the human population, like at least. Hey, but it is actually significantly more comfortable than things that are greater than 6mm, so I'll take what I get here. Now this IEM is its own thing because it actually comes with two cables. You've got the good old-fashioned single-ended analog you know what's what, and you've got, might I add, a significantly nicer cable that ends in its very own DAC dongle. And this particular thing not only has its own little EQ, but this whole thing comes with an app, the Moondrop Link app. Now it's available, I believe, on PC and Android. On iOS, the Link app doesn't do anything, but that allows you to do a couple of interesting things, which we'll get to when we talk about the tuning. So first, how does it sound analog? Just without any EQ applied, how does it sound? So by itself, the Dusk is a relatively neutral sound with a bass boost, but with the mid-range pretty much completely flat, or at least the lower mid-range. Ear gain, pinna gain, everything around the 3 kHz region, it's kind of on the sharper side of things with a significant emphasis in the upper treble, and it's the upper treble that I'm having a little bit of trouble with. Now, I don't think anyone's gonna have a problem with the bass here. Mid-bass punch is really good. You've got two opposing dynamic drivers to thank for that, and then you've got the sub-bass, which is also, it's good. I don't think anyone's going to be lacking for bass, and if you do, there's something for you later in this video as well. But I feel like for some people who are used to more forward vocals, you might feel that the vocals are a little bit on the recessed side in this IEM. I don't, but you might. I can see that because a lot of other IEMs generally push the vocals up a little further, especially nowadays. My issue with this IEM mostly is the treble, because the upper treble is the sort of treble that really exacerbates certain sounds. Hi-hats, cymbals, female vocals that tend to be a little bit on the sibilant side, and maracas even. Anything that has a high treble element to it is exacerbated and therefore introduces a bit of glare in the sound signature overall. Timbre in the mids also tends to be a little bit on the sort of thinner, sharper side. This could be tuning, this could be the balanced armature, I don't know which, but the effect is certainly there. Having said that, if you don't like this tuning, that's okay. Just slap on the noticeably nicer DSP cable and immediately you get the default DSP sound. That's without the app even, it's just stored on board this little thing. And that is a significantly different sound signature. Now what you get is vocals that actually cut through the mix a bit more because that 3 kHz peak is pushed up just a little bit, but more importantly, between 1 and 2 kHz, there's a little bit of a suck out, a little bit lack of energy, which makes the vocals sound a little bit cleaner, a little bit sharper, and therefore a little bit more emphasized. But along with that is a massive shelving up. So what you have now is, interestingly, everything below 700 Hz is shelved up. So you have a really warm, really bassy sound by default. Now, for things like hip hop and EDM and whatnot, it's gonna sound great. Now, when you listen to rock and heavy metal though, I find this tuning to be a little bit much. The sound gets a little bit congested, like there's just too much going on. And because of that, it's probably worth thinking about cleaning it up. Luckily, there are 4 other presets available in the Moondrop Link app. You've got Harman, does what it says on the tin, it sounds like Harman, it actually does a pretty good job of sounding like the usual Harman IEM target that most people want. Then you've got the V-shape, which I personally won't go anywhere near. This is V-shaped enough for me as it is by default with the DSP on, so I don't need any more of that. You've got Bass Plus for people who think this doesn't have enough bass. Again, I have no idea what you degenerates are thinking out there. This has plenty of bass, but if you want more, it's there. And finally, the most interesting one of the lot, the diffused field target. Okay, now I'm going to put two graphs up. I'm going to put the default DSP frequency response as well as the diffused field tilt frequency response. And instead of normalizing them between 500 and 1000 Hertz, which is what you normally do, which by the way is a fancy way of saying get the graphs to match up at a certain frequency so it's easier to read the differences between them. That's all it is. Instead of doing that between 500 and 1000 Hertz, I'm going to do it at the 3 kilohertz point. Why? Because when you switch presets, that's exactly what it sounds like. So you're on default DSP and you switch to diffused field tilt, and immediately the vocals kind of stay where they are, but they become a little thinner and sharper still, and therefore they feel like they're cutting through the mix a bit better. They feel a little bit more emphasized. At the same time, the mid bass kind of disappear. It doesn't disappear, it's still very much there, but there's a huge scoop out. And because of that, it sounds a whole lot cleaner, but the entire sound signature just feels more relaxed and a little more spacious. And my personal favorite thing about the diffused field tilt DSP setting, it's such a mouthful, is that the upper treble is actually reduced. So finally, this is the target that I would go back to often, simply because of that upper treble. But I do think this tuning needs a little bit of work as well. I don't know why there's a mid-bass suck out. I don't think it needs to be there. Maybe it was an attempt at reducing distortion. Maybe if Crinacle's watching this, he can shed some light on that. Now, as you can see, while these tunings are interesting, and despite me saying they're all congested a little bit and whatnot with the default tuning, this IEM is very capable. It's got all the drivers in the world, and the resolution is there, the layering is there, all that is still there, right? You're not losing any of that. It's just when you listen to heavy metal, hard rock, the default tuning can get a bit much. It just can get really warm and muddy. And because of that, maybe you want to tweak it a little bit. Like if I were tuning it, I would do it a little bit differently, but the same can be said for everyone. Luckily, everyone can tune it differently right now because they have included a PEQ section in the Moondrop Link app. Okay, a little bit of a side note. This app is available on Android, but you have to download it as an APK and install it. It's not available on the Play Store as far as I could see. On the iOS app, it just doesn't work with this IEM. I think that's more for the Bluetooth earbuds. Just saying. Hi, sorry. I know you were enjoying that video, but I just noticed you forgot to hit that subscribe button. So just reach down there. It's really simple. It's free. Just hit that subscribe. Oh, and shout out to members. Giveaways coming soon. I wasn't joking about that. Giveaways. If you're a member, you get giveaways automatically. There's no competition. You just get it. If you're not a member, remember, no one cares what you think. Become a member. Now, where were we? Oh yes, the PEQ. So there's an entire tab where you can set your filters, but the one thing you must understand, and this is not that intuitive because coming from Bluetooth IEMs, how they work is you select a preset and then you EQ on top of that, right? So you would think, hey, I like the Harman shape, but I don't like the upper mid section. I'm going to select Harman, go into PEQ and just down EQ that. You can't do that. What happens here is the PEQ starts off from the base analog physical tuning. So you're tuning the actual IEM from scratch. And because of that, you if you want Harman with a little bit less mid-range, a little bit less upper mid-range, you're gonna have to start from the base and work all your filters to do that. So it's a fair bit of work and it's not for everyone. However, if you just want to tweak the bass tuning a bit like I did, then the PEQ actually works. Which brings me to the myriad advantages of having a little DAC dongle. First of all, it's very convenient. You've got your DAC right there. You don't have to carry another DAC. Second, you can apply EQs. But third, and this is very important, the EQ when applied stays on board this. So no matter what source material, no matter what source I'm connecting this to in the future, it sounds the way I want it to sound, which is a distinct advantage that wireless IEMs have that now wired IEMs also have. Here's the thing, if tomorrow Crinacle or Moondrop decides, hey, you know what, we can do a little bit better, our EQ, the diffused field EQ needs a little bit of work, they can push an update and improve things. That's a huge advantage. To me, the other advantage is that if, like me, none of the tunings quite hit the spot for you, well, you can make your own. And I did. I have uploaded it onto the Moondrop Link app, but I don't know if that shows up for everyone. If you go on the app and you go to the download section under the PEQ, and if you find something called What's New X Dusk, try it out. It's a little bit different. What I've basically done is I've taken the bass tuning, I've added a little bit of warmth from 300 Hertz downwards. So I've left 300 to 800 Hertz as is which is the way I like it. Let's not up tilt that when it's not required. And I've also increased the mid presence just a little bit, just a couple of dB, while also boosting 2 kilohertz a little bit. So it creates that nice, warm, relaxed, rounded vocals rather than the sharp vocals that Crinacle usually tunes in. Also, I have reduced everything around 14 kilohertz a little, just to reduce that upper treble, and I personally prefer this. So this is my tuning, and if you can't find it on the app, don't worry. Here's a shot. You can pause the video here and you can copy the settings. Now, as nice as the PEQ is, it's not all rainbows and butterflies, because it has one glaring issue, and that is the Moondrop Link app is a little bit buggy. Obviously, we already know that the EQ you apply only applies to the bass analog tuning, not the presets. So you can't take a preset and tweak it, but that's okay. It's working as intended. The problem is, after you apply the PEQ, if you want to go back to the default DSP setting, it doesn't always switch back. It says it's applied it, but doesn't apply it, at least in my unit. What you do is basically you cycle through to another preset, apply it, take your time, come back and try it again a couple of times, and it usually does go back. Oh, I almost forgot. One little pro tip. If you want to use the DSP cable because of the convenience of not having an external DAC, but if you like the default analog tuning, there's no preset for it. Here's what you do. You go to PEQ and just hit apply. Basically, by default, all the PEQs are 0, and what that does is it just removes all the preset EQs and just leaves it. So you've got this, it still functions as a DAC, but you've got no tuning being applied over here, which means what you're listening to is the default physical tuning of the IEM. That's how you use the default tuning with the app, with the DSP. So you're welcome. Now, if I were to compare this with IEMs, it probably should compare it with something like the The Audio, but instead I'm going to compare it with the TV Ears Quintet, because while the Blessing was really good a couple of years back, right now the competition's stiff, as it should be. Around the $200 price point, I usually either recommend a plain IEM or I'll recommend something like the Quintet. The Quintet has its own issues a little bit in the lower treble, but by and large, from a resolution ability, the Quintet is every bit as resolving as this IEM, which then would make you think, why spend $100, $150 more for the Dusk? Yes, you get this cable, and I'm not entirely sure what the cable is worth, but that's worth something. It's got the convenience, but you can buy that cable, and if you get the Quintet for cheap, you can buy the cable and use it with that as well. So, I think maybe in the current scenario, this IEM is a little bit on the expensive side. And yes, it's resolving, it's very good at layering, but also from a soundstage perspective, while I don't expect much from IEMs, this doesn't deliver that much either. It's not the widest soundstage, it's not the deepest soundstage, and in that respect, again, the Quintet sometimes, honestly, surprises me. So I think this is a very good IEM, but I do think the price is a little bit steep. Having said that, if that price is worth it to you because you get the DSP cable with it, and because it can actually handle multiple tunings, even difficult tunings that lesser IEMs might have a trouble handling, it does handle pretty decently. This is a good IEM at the end of the day. And if you want bass, you got bass. If you want finesse, you've got finesse. And if you think it doesn't have any of those things, you can just EQ it in. Overall, yeah, it's expensive, but if you dial it in just right, this could also be your one and done. Now with a narrower nozzle to boot. Oh, and did I mention they also give you an airline adapter? It costs you like 5 cents. I know, but maybe it's a thought that counts, but hey, value for money. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Crinacle Dusk. I'll see you in the next one. Stay happy, stay peaceful, stay colorful. Namaste.